Hi, in today's class I am going to solve the another problem related to income from house property. Let me explain the problem first. Compute annual value means annual value AV from the following details. Net annual value. Annual value means net annual value of the following properties. Property A, B, C and D are given. Municipal value, fair rent and standard rent of four properties. Next one, all the houses are self-occupied by the SSC. So it is given all the houses are self-occupied by the SSC. So as per the Income Tax Act, the SSC can use only two houses for self-residence. If SSC utilized more than two houses for self-residential purpose, then all the houses expected rental value to be calculated. The houses which carries the highest expected rental value considered as a self-occupied property and remaining houses considered as a deemed let out property. So in this problem, all the four houses, property A, B, C and D are used for residential purpose, means are used as a self-occupied property. But for the assessment, only two houses can be considered as a self-occupied property as per the Act. The Income Tax Act says only two houses can be considered as a self-occupied property. So in here, SSC used four houses for self-residence. So now we have to consider only two houses as a self-occupied property. Then which house to be considered as a self-occupied? So for that, you have to calculate the expected rental value of all the houses which are used for residential purpose. The houses which gets a higher expected rental value, the first two houses which gets a higher expected rental value, they are considered as a self-occupied property and remaining houses considered as a deemed let out property, means they have to be assessed like a let out property, and other houses, first two houses considered as a self-occupied property. You have to calculate expected rental value whenever SSC uses more than two houses for residential purpose. Then you have to compare the expected rental value with all the houses, and the houses, first two houses which gets higher expected rental value considered as a self-occupied property and remaining houses considered as a deemed let out property. So in this problem, all the houses are a self-occupied property. So we have to find out which houses are self-occupied and which houses are deemed let out property. And another point in this problem, the municipal taxes are levied at 10% of AMV. AMV stands for annual municipal value. Municipal taxes charged at 10% of annual municipal value. So we have to find out the annual value of all the properties, property A, B, C and D. So before calculation of annual value, means net annual value, first we have to categorize which property is a self-occupied and which one is a let out property. So as per SSC used all the four houses for residential purpose, but for the calculation purpose we have to consider only two houses as a self-occupied property. So first we will do the working note related to find out this which one is a self-occupied property. So working note, the calculation of expected rental value to find out self-occupied property. So first you have to calculate the expected rental value of all the four houses, means the houses which are used for residential purpose, and this is applicable whenever SSC uses more than two houses for residential purpose. If SSC uses only one house or only two houses for residential purpose, then this working note is not required. Whenever it crosses the limit of using of a residential house, then you have to find out the which one as self-occupied and which one as a let out property. There you have to do the working note. So working note is related to calculation of expected rental value, and that will help you to find out which one is a self-occupied property. The procedure of calculation of expected rental value is the same. It's municipal value, fair rental value and standard rental value. You have to compare it. So property A, B, C, D. First municipal value which are given in the problem, then fair rental value, then standard rental value which are given in the problem. First property A, municipal value is 30,000 and fair rental value is 36,000. The first highest, the highest is 36,000. Next 36,000 or 38,000, whichever is the lowest. So first highest 30 or 36,000, whichever is highest. Next this highest value with the 38,000, the standard rental value, whichever is the lowest. So expected rent for the first house is 36,000 and second house standard rent is not applicable, so therefore municipal value or fair rental value, whichever is the highest, is a expected rental value. So standard rental value is not applicable, so whenever there is no standard rent, municipal value or fair rent, whichever is the highest, is a expected rental value. Next property C, 36,000 or 30,000, municipal value or fair rental value, whichever is the highest. The highest is a 30,000. Next 30,000 or 28,000, whichever is the lowest. So lowest is a 28,000. So that is the expected rental value. And next property D, 28,000 or 32,000, whichever is the highest. The highest is a 32,000. Next 32,000 or 35,000, whichever is the lowest. So lowest is a 32,000. So these are the expected rental value of property A, B, C and D. And we have calculated it mainly to find out which house property carries higher expected rental value. Through that you can categorize which property is a self-occupied property and which one is a deemed let out property. So as per our calculation, the expected rental value of house A and house D, property A and property D, expected rental value highest. House A 36,000 and house D 32,000. The highest expected rental value of first two house property, that is considered as a self-occupied property. The property first two property which carries the highest expected rental value considered as a self-occupied property. So here while you are comparing the expected rental value of all the properties, the first property carries 36,000 expected rental value. Next one is a property D, that is 32,000. Next comes property C and next comes property B. So first two properties A and D carries highest expected rental value. So therefore property A and D are considered as a self-occupied property and property B and C are considered as a let out property, or they are considered as a deemed let out property. They are considered treated as a deemed let out property, means they are assessment is the same like a let out property. So that is how to calculate or how to find out a self-occupied property whenever SSC uses more than two houses for residential purpose. So first you have to calculate the expected rent, then you have to compare it, and the houses which carries the highest expected rental value, the first two houses are considered as a self-occupied property and remaining houses considered as a deemed let out property. Now as per the working note, property A and property D are treated as a self-occupied property. Property B and C are treated as a let out property. First we will calculate the net annual value of let out properties. That's a property A and property B and property C, which are considered as a let out property or considered as a deemed let out property. The format for the calculation of net annual value for deemed let out property and let out property, they are one and the same. As like earlier I told, in case of format there is no differentiation, there is only two types. One is a self-occupied property and let out property. Self-occupied property carries separate format, whereas let out property and demood let out property carries same format for the calculation of a net annual value as well as a calculation of income from house property. So in this problem, property A, B and property C are let out property, means demood let out property. For the assessment, they are considered as a let out property. So first we have to calculate expected rental value, again which we have calculated already in the working note. So municipal value, fair rent and standard rent. The expected rent value of the property B is 26,000, whereas expected rental value for property C is 28,000. Next is the rent received or rent receivable. Rent received or receivable for a let out period. See, this property practically, both property B and property C, practically they are not used for let out purpose. SSC not received any rent throughout the year. He used it for self-residence. So therefore, rent received in this case is not applicable. No rent received or rent receivable is not applicable because they are practically not considered as a not utilized for let out property. So therefore, there is no income. For assessment purpose, for the tax assessment purpose, we have assessed it, we have considered it as let out property since SSC crossed the limit of use of self-residential house. So therefore property B and C are considered as a let out property. So in such cases, rent received is generally nil or not applicable. The property which are used as a deemed let out property, for such type of property there will not be any rent received or unrealized rent and even vacancy period. For assessment purpose only they are considered as a let out property. So this part not applicable for deemed let out property because there is no actual income. Practically there is no income. So first expected rental value, then rent received is not applicable. The entire process of rent received is not applicable. Then comes gross annual value. Since there is no rent received, the expected rental value itself is the gross annual value in case for let out, deemed let out properties. So even you can compare, rent received is not applicable, whichever is highest is a gross annual value. That means expected rental value itself is a gross annual value in case of deemed let out property. Okay. Otherwise you can compare expected rent or rent received, whichever is highest is the same clause, 26,000 or 28,000, or rent received whichever is highest, the highest is of 28,000. So in case of deemed let out property, expected rental value itself is the gross annual value. Next, after calculation of gross annual value, next is you have to deduct the municipal tax paid by owner, paid by SSC, and it is a 10% of municipal value. The municipal value of the property is a 24,000 into 10%, 2,400. So after deducting it, the net annual value is rupees 23,600. And whereas for property C, gross annual value 28,000 and municipal tax is a municipal value 26,000 and 26,000 into 10%, it's a 2,600. 10% of annual municipal value. Annual municipal value is 26,000. 26,000 into 10%, so 2,600 is a municipal tax and the balance amount is called as a net annual value. So net annual value for property B and property C is 23,600 and 25,400. So that is how to find out the net annual value for deemed let out property. Only one point you have to note down about net expected rental value and gross annual value. There is no rent received. Rent received is not applicable. This is the important part. Rent received is not applicable for deemed let out property. So therefore, in such cases, the expected rental value itself is the gross annual value. So next, about the calculation of annual value of self-occupied properties, the property which are used for residential purpose property A and property D. As per our calculation, property A and D are considered as a self-occupied property because uh, as per the assessment, as per after calculation of expected rental value, then we come to the conclusion that property A and D are considered as a self-occupied property, and if you consider these two as self-occupied and B and C as let-out property, SSC gets more tax benefits. So that's why we have to consider property A and D as self-occupied and B and C as a let-out property. So now we have to calculate annual value of self-occupied property. The annual value for self-occupied property is nil. Property A net annual value is nil, and property D is a net annual value is nil, because both the properties are used for self-residential, or both the properties are considered as a self-occupied property. Always the net annual value of self-occupied property is nil. You can refer the format, or please go through the format related to the self-occupied property. So in case of self-occupied property, the procedure starts from net annual value itself. So it is always nil for self-occupied property. So that's about how to find out net annual value whenever the properties are used for residential purpose, or whenever there is a self-occupied property and deemed let out property. Thank you.